Al Jazeera was banned in an intense and sharp escalation in Israel's censorship regime and a very clear attack on press freedom. So I welcome you to this broadcast. I'm Kevin Gosztola. I'm a journalist, a press freedom advocate. I'm the editor of the Dissenter newsletter, which you can find at thedissenter.org. Israel has played the United States, having obtained tens of billions of dollars in arms, and the flow of arms shipments continue. They are not doing anything. The U.S. government is not doing a thing to stop the Israeli government from clamping down on this Arab news network that has, in many ways, been a lifeline for people in Palestine, people in the Palestinian territories. And here's what was recorded. It was recorded before the raid that took place, and it just lays out what this means for Al Jazeera.
Watching this pre-recorded report, then Al Jazeera has been banned in the territory of Israel. On April the 1st, the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, passed a law that allowed the Prime Minister to ban Al Jazeera. He's now enacted that law. Let me just take you through some of the definitions within the law. They've banned our website, including anything that has the option of entering or accessing the website, even passwords that are needed, whether they're paid or not, and whether it's stored on Israeli servers or outside of Israel. The website is now inaccessible. They're also banning any device used for providing content. That includes my mobile phone. If I use that to do any kind of news gathering, then the Israelis can simply confiscate it. Our internet access provider, the guy that simply hosts AlJazeera.net, is also in danger of being fined if they host the website. The Al Jazeera TV channel completely banned. Transmission by any kind of content provider is also banned, and holding offices or operating them in the territory of Israel by the channel. Also, once again, any devices used to provide content for the channel can be taken away by the Israelis. It's a wide-ranging ban. We don't know how long it will be in place for, but it does cover this territory of the state of Israel. Imran Khan, Al Jazeera, occupied East Jerusalem.
It doesn't stop with Al Jazeera. It doesn't have to stop with Al Jazeera. The law that was passed back on April 1st is a law that gives the ministers and the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, the authority and the power to go after any media organization that is deemed a national security threat. So that is something we have to be mindful of as we talk about this ban. There is evidence that the Israeli government and even the U.S. government, for what it's worth, has had its history of attacks on Al Jazeera specifically for what it represents. Within Israel, in addition to the executions or the outright assassinations of people who are working for Al Jazeera and other outlets in the Gaza Strip who have tried to report, we have over 100 journalists that have been killed at this point. In addition to that, they are restricting access to this media and doing all manner of acts to make sure that the Israeli people do not get to view Al Jazeera. But because Al Jazeera has been one of the only media channels that has been able to do sustained on-the-ground reporting. Israel has imposed what Committee to Protect Journalists CEO Jody Ginsburg terms a censorship regime. They've imposed a censorship regime that makes it possible to prevent any foreign correspondents from going into Gaza. And they've been able to gain the cooperation of the Egyptian government to try and block people from going in from the the Egypt border with Gaza. And so by having all access shut down to Gaza, you can embed with Israeli military, and we know how that goes because those of you who recall the history of the Iraq War, one of the biggest scandals was the manner in which U.S. journalists would embed with these forces and give a skewed portrait of what was unfolding, and it would help justify a war that was entirely built on lies, as many wars are built around fictions. So, would like to go to Al Jazeera managing editor Mohammed Moawad, who was on Democracy Now! And had this to say about what this means for his organization.
The Minister of Communications took actions on the ground to block our coverage by seizing our signal with the cable companies in Israel and raiding our locations. They have raided a remote location, live position, where our colleagues at Al Jazeera English were broadcasting, and they have placed a blockade on our office in Jerusalem. And of course, this law is ambiguous. I mean, they can take actions as much as the Prime Minister Netanyahu is concerned. They can do the same with our office in Ramallah in the West Bank, because they can say that this is under the umbrella of the emergency law.
So we should appreciate that these journalists that work for Al Jazeera, they are now effectively legitimate military targets. That is the signal that the Israeli military is sending to the world. That's my opinion, but it's also based upon the evidence on the ground. And we've already seen people like Wild Dadu and others have been targeted. There are Al Jazeera employees that have had to flee. They had to flee Gaza because they were under attack from Israeli military forces. Shireen Abu Akleh, Palestinian-American journalist, was murdered, and that was confirmed by a UN agency that conducted an investigation. The U.S. can put whatever spin they want on it to help further facilitate their U.S. military support for and to justify the unwavering support for Israel. But the fact is, she was murdered. And then there was a tower in 2021 that had over a dozen media organizations in it, including Al Jazeera, that was bombed by Israel. And that was a crime in and of itself. I want to get to the first clip from the State Department briefing that happened today. It went for more than 24 hours. There's really no official response from any U.S. government official, but there's this figure, the spokesperson paid to lie, who has gained more and more recognition as the face of the official statements about the U.S. war. I'm not actually referring to John Kirby. I think that Matthew Miller has been out there more because there's more regular State Department briefings. What we hear from him gets baffling and more baffling by the day. So I want to play here. This is a question about the U.S.'s opinion of the shutdown of Al Jazeera.
Ask you if you can just answer this simply and straight about the Israeli closure of Al Jazeera. What is your response?
So we have seen the announcement from the government of Israel about closing Al Jazeera. We have made quite clear that we support media freedom all around the world, including in Israel, and that we are quite concerned about this action.
You're quite concerned about this action? Are you asking the Israelis to do anything?
So as the president said on May 3rd, journalists and media workers are an essential part of any democracy, because well-informed dissent is critical to building stronger and more successful societies, and we will continue to support and advocate for free and independent media around the world. We think Al Jazeera ought to be able to operate in Israel as they operate in other countries in the region.
So you oppose?
We do.
You oppose?
We do.
Okay.
So there's the slimy toad saying he's quite concerned, and I do love the reaction of that's Matthew Lee, who is there for the Associated Press, asking about this and wondering appropriately, is there any action that is being taken? The answer is no, there aren't any actions that are being taken. And I think that there's a very limited actions that can be taken. Israel has been armed to the teeth by United States government, and they have an arsenal that they can use to deploy whatever force they would like. The U.S. has empowered this attack on Al Jazeera through its support of the Israeli government. There's no strings attached. You know, what human rights abuses are not going to be committed.
Okay. All right. On Al Jazeera, now we know that Israel is accusing the correspondents of Al Jazeera, our colleague, who are Israeli citizens, by the way, accusing them of incitement that goes back many years and all these things, a crime that is punishable by imprisonment. Are you worried that these correspondents might actually be imprisoned by the Israelis? And if they are, what would the government of the United States do?
So I'm not going to speak to those specific allegations. It's not something that we've reviewed in detail. We would have to do that. I'm certainly not going to speculate about what we might do in response to an action that has not yet been taken. I will just reiterate that when it comes to the decision to shutter Al Jazeera's operations in Israel, it's something that we are concerned by. We support the work that journalists and media do. We have had, I don't think it's any secret that we have had our differences with with Al Jazeera over the years, including some of the ways in which they cover this conflict. But we support the free media conducting their operations everywhere in the world.
Yeah, I think most countries have had an issue with Al Jazeera. Let me ask you.
They think it's outlandish that Israel would detain Al Jazeera journalists. I'd like to point to Reporters Without Borders that has as they document 37 journalists detained currently or in prison, in jail right now in Israel. Israel will jail journalists. Israel